What we saw was minutes of someone struggling for their life. We saw minutes of someone heaving back and forth. We saw spit. We saw all sorts of stuff from his mouth develop on the mask. We saw this mask tied to the gurney and him ripping his head forward over and over and over again. And we also saw correction officials in the room who were visibly surprised at how bad this thing went.
DC The Voice, Alabama Prisoner Profiles. What's going down with y'all, man? Make sure y'all continue to like, subscribe, share the content, leave a comment, send the super thanks in the comment section. Make sure y'all continue to bless that Cash App and the PayPal, $ Bama Prison Files with 2 S's, man. Say, man, I'm still fighting COVID, as you guys may know. So I'm going to try to work through this video here. Couldn't let this one slip away, right? Now, I want to announce to y'all, memberships are now active for the channel, guys. So you guys join the membership, and I kept it G, you know what I'm saying? $2 a month right now. You know what I'm saying? $2, you get early access to content, get a loyalty badge. Get you some membership shout outs, get you some priority comments, so I'll see your shit first and respond to your shit first, and some more features like that. Check out that membership if y'all are interested. Now, one more thing, I want to give a shout out to Whoa for the $10 Cash App, and shout out that boy Jaybird SB for the dub on Cash App. Like I said, the platform appreciates it, especially while niggas is written off work and can't work and not being paid, you know what I'm saying? So I do appreciate y'all, which is why I'm just gonna go crazy on the channel during my time off work with these assholes, right? Alright, now today I'm bringing this to y'all. We have the state of Alabama. And what is this, the third installment of Death Row, Alabama, where they have executed the first prisoner of 2024 by their new controversial method of nitrogen hypoxia. And apparently it was, it was kind of rough to look at from what I'm being told. Let's hop right into that right now. Pastor Charles Sennett Sr. hired Billy Gray Williams, one of his tenants, to go unalive his wife, Elizabeth Dorleen Sennett. To carry out the plan, Williams hired Kenneth Smith and John Forrest Parker to assist him. Charles was going to pay each of the men $1,000 for the unaliving. On March 18th, 1988, Elizabeth Sennett was found with fatal injuries in her home in Colbert County, Alabama. Sheriff Ronnie May was one of the first people to arrive on scene, and he was unable to find a pulse for Elizabeth. However, when emergency medical technicians arrived, they found a pulse. May stated that Charles, quote, fell when he was told that Elizabeth had a pulse. May then rode with Elizabeth in an ambulance, and she was declared unalive by doctors at the hospital. Investigators thought the home looked staged to make it appear there had been a home invasion. Many remembered meeting Charles Sennett a few weeks ago prior to the incident when they were investigating another unaliving and had to ask Sennett to leave several times. May. Investigators received a call from Crime Stoppers that gave them the suspects' names. On March 25th, investigators brought Charles in for questioning, but he denied involvement. When Charles went to leave, someone asked Charles if he knew Kenneth Smith, and Charles turned red. Charles left the interview and went to his church, where he met with his sons and their families and admitted to having an affair and having their mother unalived. Charles then went to the parking lot, got in his truck, and fatally unalived himself. Investigators received a search warrant to search Smith's home and found a video recorder from the Senate's home. Smith and Parker provided information to the police about Elizabeth's death. Sentencing. Smith was tried and convicted in Jefferson County on a change of venue from Colbert County to reduce pre-trial publicity. The jury in Smith's first trial found Smith guilty of unaliving Elizabeth Dorleen Sennett and recommended to the trial judge that he be executed by a vote of 10-2. Smith was sentenced to death. However, the conviction and sentence were vacated on appeal. In Smith's second ordered trial, the jury in the case recommended a life sentence. The judge overruled their recommendation and sentenced Smith to death. Parker was also sentenced to death, while Williams was sentenced to life without the possibility of parole. Parker was executed on June 10, 2010 via lethal injection. Williams died in prison in November 2020 from an undisclosed illness. Smith exhausted his final appeals from the second conviction and sentence in 2022. Botched execution. Smith was initially scheduled to be executed by lethal injection on November 17, 2022. Despite the fact Smith had a motion to stay his execution pending before the United States Court of Appeals for the 11th Circuit at 7:45 p.m. on November 17, 2022, a lawyer for the Alabama Department of Corrections emailed Smith's lawyers to let them know they were preparing him for execution. Smith spoke with his wife, and at 7:57 p.m., they ended his phone call with her. Smith was handcuffed and shackled and taken to the execution chamber. Shortly after this, the 11th Circuit issued a stay of execution, which Smith's lawyers immediately provided to the Alabama Department of Corrections. The Department of Corrections replied they had received notice of the stay, but did not inform Smith or allow him to speak with his attorneys, instead keeping him strapped to a gurney in the execution chamber. At 10 p.m., the execution team entered and attempted to place an IV into Smith's arm. At approximately 10:20 p.m., the United States Supreme Court lifted the 11th Circuit stay of execution. Smith told a member of the execution team that they were inserting the needle into his muscle, but the team member told him that was not true. The team then moved Smith into an inverted crucifixion position and left the room, returning after a few minutes to inject him with an unknown substance, despite Smith's objection. Another individual began repeatedly stabbing Smith's collarbone with a needle, attempting to place a central IV line. The results were unsuccessful, and at approximately 11:20 p.m., Smith's execution was called off. Smith was unable to walk or lift his arms on his own and was sweating and hyperventilating. This marked the third consecutive botched execution by the state of Alabama. Following the incident, Governor Kay Ivey ordered a review of Alabama's execution process. Governor Ivey also asked the Supreme Court to amend the state court's rules governing death warrants to allow the Department of Corrections more time to kill people, basically. Smith was scheduled to be executed on January 25th, 2024 by the new method of nitrogen hypoxia. On January 10, 2024, a federal judge ruled that Alabama could proceed with the execution of Smith using nitrogen gas. On January 24, 2024, the Supreme Court refused to hear his final appeal and denied his request to stay his execution, which was supported by Smith's two sons and her other family members. If the execution was to go forward as planned, Smith would have been the first person to be executed using this method. Execution. Alabama on Thursday night executed Kenneth Smith, the first death row inmate known to die by nitrogen gas, marking the emergence of a wholly new method of execution in the United States that experts have said could lead to excessive pain or even torture. Earlier Thursday, the Supreme Court denied his last-minute appeal to halt the execution after declining the same request on Wednesday. Smith's time of death was 8:25 p.m. local time, officials announced. In a news conference after the execution, the Alabama Department of Corrections Commissioner John Hamm said nitrogen was running for about 15 minutes. In a joint report, witnesses from the media said Smith had a lengthy statement before he died, saying, quote, "Tonight, Alabama caused humanity to take a step backward," and adding, quote, "I'm leaving with love, peace, and light. Thank you for supporting me. I love all of you," unquote. Smith appeared conscious for, quote, "several minutes into the execution," unquote. And for 2 minutes after that, he, quote, "shook and writhed on a gurney," according to the media witness reports. That was followed by several minutes of deep breathing before his breath began slowing until it was no longer perceptible for media witnesses. When asked at the news conference about Smith shaking during the start of the execution, Hamm said Smith appeared to be holding his breath, quote, "for as long as he could," and may have also, quote, "struggled against his restraints." Quote, "There was some involuntary movement and some agonal breathing, so that was all expected, and in the side effects that we've seen in research on nitrogen hypoxia," Hamm added. So nothing was out of the ordinary of what we were expecting. Agonal breathing is usually described as a kind of gasping seen in people who are dying. Another witness, Smith's spiritual advisor, who had previously expressed concern that the method is humane, described the death in more graphic terms, saying it was, quote, "the most horrible thing he had ever witnessed." Smith, wearing a mask, though which the nitrogen was administered, convulsed when the gas was turned on, popped up on the gurney repeatedly, and gasped and heaved, the Reverend Jeff Hood said. Quote, "An unbelievable evil was unleashed tonight," Hood said. One of the sons of the victim, Elizabeth Sennett, said Smith's death got justice for his mother. Quote, "Nothing happened here today that's going to bring my mother back. Nothing," Mike Sennett said at the news conference. Quote, "We're glad this day is over. All three of the people involved in this case years ago, we have forgiven them." Quote, "Kenneth Smith made some bad decisions about 35 years ago, and his debt was paid tonight." In a statement, Smith's legal team said they were, quote, "deeply saddened by his death," adding he had found and, quote, "sincerely practiced his faith," and had become sober and helped several other inmates achieve sobriety and had earned an associate's degree. Quote, "Nothing can undo the tragic consequences of the actions for which he was convicted, including the pain of the Sennett family and friends. Kenny's life, however, should be considered in its full context," the statement added. Little is known about how the method of execution known as nitrogen hypoxia was carried out because the state's published protocol bears redactions experts say shield key details from public scrutiny. The state and court records indicated the redactions were made to maintain security, and it believes the death by nitrogen gas to be, quote, perhaps the most humane method of execution ever devised. But Smith and his legal team were skeptical. Quote, the eyes of the world are on this impending moral apocalypse, the inmate and his spiritual advisor Hood said midday Thursday in a joint statement. Quote, our prayer is that people will not turn their heads. We simply cannot normalize the suffocation of each other. Elizabeth Sennett's son told CNN earlier Thursday they felt it was time for Smith's sentence to be carried out, adding they believed their mother was forgotten because of the new execution method. Quote, it seems like a lot of the focus today is on Smith and his nitrogen or whatever process, Mike Sennett said. And that's kind of upset us a little bit. Quote, what's going on is overshadowing what's actually happened, his brother Chuck Sennett said. Quote, he's got to pay the price for what he done to our mother, who should be remembered as a loving, caring woman. The two brothers were in their 20s when their mother was unalived. Before his execution, Smith accepted a final meal of steak, hash browns, and eggs, according to the information released by the Alabama Department of Corrections. And there y'all have it, man. The state of Alabama hopping out in front, making history with the first successful nitrogen gas execution of 2024. The first of, I'm sure, to be many more to come. I want to say condolences to the Sennett family. I want to say condolences to the Smith family. Please keep all parties in you guys' prayers if that's what you guys do. Let me know what y'all think about this in the comments section. Like, share, subscribe, Cash App, PayPal, super thanks, super chat. Get that membership, y'all. DC The Voice, Alabama Prisoner Profiles.